Thank you, Peter. Oh my, welcome. I'm really glad to be back. How many of you were here last year? A few hands? Okay. So I did this last year and I had a great time. It was really fun, very informational. I want this to be interactive. If you have a question, I will try to keep time at the end for you to ask questions, so put your hand up and we have a mic that will come around. So please do ask questions, because this is an informational, informative, let's talk among ourselves. You're all in this sector, you're all practitioners, so we want you to get practical and talk to some of our panels, all right? We're gonna do 2 panels in a row, and then I think we're having a break. So basically we're gonna do boom, boom, drama, and then virtual reality. There's a lot of stuff that's happening in the virtual reality panel, so just, if you've got any kind of direct line to the technology gods, now is a good time to put in a good word for us, okay? Yes? Think positive thoughts. All right, so what we're gonna do is the drama panel first. So I'll introduce them, and we're gonna see some really cool clips and talk about our first panel, which is modern technologies for serial drama. And I'm gonna sit down here because everyone else is sitting down. What is this about? Basically, we all know that high-end international drama is starting to be more and more in demand. Everyone from public broadcasters to commercial broadcasters to Netflix to Amazon, they all want it. Serial, high-end drama. It's gotten into, we've got lots of different things that are happening with it because the budgets are getting bigger. We're getting a lot more technology that we can use in it. We're talking a lot more about production workflows, what we can do with this stuff. It's changing how we can do storytelling. It's amazing what's going on. So we've got some interesting stuff to talk about. Who have I got on the panel? Next to me, I have Jonas Baur. He's a development producer from UFA Serial Drama. A lot of you probably know him. He works right across the road, don't you? Yes, right. So you're very familiar with Babelsberg. Yeah. Next to Jonas, we have Camilla Hammerich. Yes. She is executive producer of DR Fiction from Copenhagen, Denmark. And Camilla is the lady behind the Borgen. Now, how many of you watched Borgen? Ah, good. So this is going to be fun. So Camilla, you've got a fan base already. And next to Camilla, we have Nigel Stafford-Clark. He is executive producer of the BBC, obviously out of the UK. Nigel has done lots of different things that you've hopefully seen, at least heard about: Titanic, Passion, Bleak House in the day. So he's a very prolific producer, and Titanic is one of the things we're going to talk about today because, of course, it had a lot of interesting technology that they had to use on that. We're going to start with Jonas, yeah? Yep. Jonas, you are involved with a lot of different things. I mean, you've been a producer, you've done drama, you've done all kinds of different genres, right? When you look at technology, I mean, in some ways, the technology that's available today is allowing you to do all kinds of different things, not necessarily so high-tech, but other things as well. Talk us a little bit through what you're using technology for now, and why.
Well, of course, we use technology for what we do.
Oh, sure. But so, I mean, the new stuff.
Since all the time, but there's an interesting thing that we as a UFA, we are doing a lot of things. We do from YouTube clips to feature movies, and we're trying to profit from that. People within our house are doing different things with different technologies, and like since 2 or 3 years ago, everybody was working in his unit, in his genre, and was trying to innovate things in what he was doing, daily drama like I do, right, or high-end drama like the colleagues from UFA Fiction are doing. And now, since 2 or 3 years, we started to work close together and cooperate a lot.
So you're doing a lot more collaboration.
A lot of more. And
is that because different units are using different technologies, different ways of working, and you're learning from each other?
Yeah, and the steps are bigger. The steps of innovation are much bigger when you start to look across the borders and not try to innovate within what you do and what you know, but if you learn how, for example, the colleagues of UFA Fiction are doing documentaries and how they are shooting their documentaries, and we learned a lot for the last telenovela, which was called Mila, that we did, which was now a commercial success, but the technical innovation was really high and
don't important. Take that home, okay?
No, it wasn't because of the innovation, because they did a really great work, and we are trying to take everything that we learned and put it into our other projects, and also, of course, take it to our colleagues of the other units and tell them about it, and they will also learn from that.
Now you have a clip, I think a clip reel, right? Should we watch that now?
It's about what UFA is doing.
Just all the things that UFA does.
Yeah, it shows the range and.
Okay, so why don't we watch that before we talk anymore? Can we run the UFA reel, please?
Staffel, das wird der absolute Hammer.
Scheiße.
Ich muss dir ganz ehrlich sagen, du bist bisher der beste Sänger, den ich je gehört habe. Ja.
Das ist der Gewinner von das Supertalent 2014.
Sind Sie bereit, der Partei alles zu opfern?
Ja.
Es geht um einen wichtigeren Posten. Im Westen.
Ich mach das nicht. Ich gehe für nicht in den Hessen.
Du wirst die Identität einer real existierenden Person annehmen.
Du gehst verdeckt zur Bundeswehr.
Mein Name ist Moritz Stark.
Die Amerikaner planen einen Angriff. Du musst herausfinden, wann.
Ja, was mache ich jetzt damit? Soll ich es mir in den Arsch stecken oder wie?
Buen camino.
Wir starten ein neues Format auf Automotor und Sport.
Fixel.
Hallo zusammen, herzlich willkommen zu Tencent Forms. Jeden zweiten Freitag berichte ich hier über Themen, die mich interessieren und bereite diese kurz und knackig für euch auf.
Wir hatten das Gefühl, dass der Trend bzw. die Leute nach 4-5 Jahren hier in Berlin sich für asiatische Küche sehr interessieren.
Great. Lots of stuff there.
Lots of stuff, lots of different stuff.
Wow,
as
lots
I
of
say.
different stuff. As you say, so collaboration becomes important because different people are doing different things in different ways. Okay.
Exactly.
Now we do have this clip from the producer of Game of Thrones, which he also talks a little bit about this. So I think maybe this might be the right time. I didn't actually tell you this. I should tell you this. We also had Peter and his team went out and shot some interviews with a couple of people before this event. And one of those was Chris Newman, who is the producer of Game of Thrones. So we have a clip from him that talks a little bit kind of about collaboration, also just about how he sees, how he worked on things like, how he worked in the Game of Thrones. So if we could run that clip, that is Chris Newman clip 3, please.
We obviously had new technologies in terms of having on-set digital technicians, so that you were looking at the finished result and not getting caught up in trying to get the perfect image that that we all know can be, in film we could change the color timing and everything later, but there was a feeling in the first season that we were always trying to get the perfect look on set, which in the end, as we've learned, isn't necessarily the best way to go about it, because we can obviously change all that. The technology is there to make the look homogeneous across every episode without actually doing it on set. So again, we've learned not to trail around behind us a big information technology tent and get caught up in that. After on our 5th, 6th season now, we have managed without seamlessly, I feel, that the DIT and all that things that go with the director of photography's art hasn't become a big problem in terms of logistics. You know, we've managed it smoothly. Everyone knows what it is, and it smoothly follows us around, and isn't how would I say it? Isn't becoming the tail that wags the dog, which was a big problem, or it wasn't a problem so much as it was a concern that might be the case.
It's interesting, this whole technology is the tail that wags the dog. Have you felt that at all, or do you feel that it's actually technology is helping you tell the story?
It is also helping us to break the boundaries. As when we do serial drama, daily drama like Good Times, Bad Times here in Babelsberg, we built this building to shoot Good Times, Bad Times there. It was meant to be, and we went into the studio, and it's all very structured, and it's necessary because you know, if you don't plan it exactly, and if the writers don't know when the actor is on vacation, you will get a perfect mess. But now, for Mila, the telenovela, we use new camera technology and a team setup, which we learned also from the colleagues who do documentary, and which is much smaller and much more flexible. It can shoot with low light, and so we learned that we don't need a studio anymore. So we shot it more or less only on location. We had a kind of studio, but which was built like on location, and that's how technology really helped us to break free.
So technology actually made it so you didn't have to build a big studio setting. You could actually shoot in more natural light and things like that.
Yes,
Very
it's the same
interesting.
speed as we do here on Good Times, Bad Times.
Interesting. Camilla, let's come to you now. In some ways, what you've done is you're using technical and visual effects as a way to solve some problems that you had with Borgen, because Borgen was a very interesting, it was a kind of, in some ways, it was a kind of a classic serial drama. I mean, I don't think of it as kind of a high-tech piece. You know, it's not like you have, fighter pilots or robots or, or ships. I mean, it's a very different kind of piece. And so you've used it in some interesting ways. So talk to me about, we want to get to your clip. Yeah, so talk to us a little bit about that clip, what it was, and how that kind of set you up, how you started thinking about technology in a different way because of what you were trying to do with that debate clip.
Yeah. Basically making a drama series like Borgen, and for those of you who hasn't seen it, it's a show about the first female prime minister in Denmark, and it's a show about coalition politics, and it's not a very VFX kind of show, but I love the VFX guys, the visual effects guys, very much after having done Borgen, because in this clip we're going to see, it's from the first episode. It's the final TV debate before election. It's the place where Birgitte Nyborg, our protagonist, she kind of wins the election, you could say. But what you should look after are all the screens in this sequence, because this, I would call it a signature scene for Borgen, because it kind of connects the three universes of Borgen, which are the politics, press, and private life. And what we didn't know was, we just kind of, the writers invented a television station, and the writers have worked on television stations for like 25 years, so we thought we are the ones to do it, but you have no idea how difficult it is to make a television station in a drama series. So this was the first scene we shot, and after that we learned that technology and the screens, the visual effects, because all the screens you see are made on green screen, and we have put in the images afterwards. It could kind of help us make Borgen, you could say. The way we we go from one universe to the other.
Right, sort of from the newsroom where they're doing the debate to the house where the family's watching.
Yes,
and
into
then
the studio where the
into the
politicians are made. That is our signature scene, and we developed our storytelling after having edited this scene, you could say.
Cool.
Yeah.
Let's run the clip. Can we run the Borgen clip, please?
Så er vi kommet til det, venner. Det er nu, alle partilederne får deres 2 minutters fri taletid. Vi starter med Anne-Sophie Lindenkrone. Værsgo. Tak.
Jeg skammer mig over at være dansker, når jeg ser, hvad det er for et egoistisk Danmark, Hesselbo og Company har vist os de sidste 7 år.
Og Katrine, det oplæg til Amie, de var, når det er på 3'eren.
Er vi sikre på, at de vange er med W?
Ja, han har tjekket, og han er der.
Og en stemme på os er en stemme på et miljørigtigt, økonomisk ansvarligt og sundt Danmark.
Og naturligvis skal Danmark have et forsvar, der er tidsvarende og veluddannet.
Så lægger vi op til Hesselbo på 3.
Vi tror da også på, at den enkeltes frihed, initiativ og handlemulighed er en vigtig drivkraft for at holde den danske økonomi kørende.
Kan vi nu stadigvæk passe godt på vores ældre, selvom vi også skal tage hånd om kriminelle indvandrere og flygtninge, der rejser 6.000 kilometer herop?
Katrine, så Birgitte Nyborg oplæg, og det er på 3'eren. Og 3 på der.
Tak, Svend Aage Saltum. Den næstsidste i rækken er Birgitte Nyborg fra De Moderate. Ordet er dit. Tak.
Ja. Vi er blevet meget professionelle, alle os, der står her. Vi ved, hvad vi bliver spurgt om på forhånd, for det vi aftalt med journalisterne. Vi får meningsmålinger hver time, der fortæller os, hvad rødhåret...
Katrine, det er ikke en forberedt tale.
Det er rent impro, det er stor fyring.
Mener om vores politik. Og alt det gør vi, fordi det er så vigtigt at ramme rigtigt. Lige nu står min spindoktor ude i kulissen og korser sig over, at jeg ikke holder mig til min tale. Han er også meget ked af, at jeg ikke har taget det tøj på, som vi har aftalt. Men sagen er, at jeg desværre ikke kan passe det for øjeblikket, fordi jeg er blevet lidt for tyk.
2 fulde figurer. Lad os lige få en fuld figur. Vi skal se kjolen der. Kom 2.
Jeg tror, det er
ja, stort. Hold fast.
At vi er dem, vi er.
Du på 2.
Jeg tror, vi bliver nødt til at indrømme, når vi tager fejl. Og sige til, når der er noget, vi ikke forstår og ikke ved. Jeg er blevet politiker, fordi jeg engang havde en mening om, hvordan vi skulle indrette verden. Og det har jeg stadigvæk. Jeg mener, at vi er ved at miste det, der får Danmark til at hænge sammen. Jeg mener, i modsætning til Frihedspartiet, at vi allerede lever i et multietnisk samfund, og derfor er det fuldstændig spild af tid at diskutere, hvad vi kan gøre for at undgå det. Jeg mener, det er en myte, at vi alle er lige og har de samme muligheder. I de sidste 7 år er der blevet meget længere mellem de fattigste og de rigeste i Danmark. Og statsministeren vil sikkert sige, at det skal nok gå for enhver sin egen lykkesmed. Men at tro på, at de frie markedskræfter er det bedste middel mod social ulighed, det er altså det samme som at tro, at bilerne selv kan udbedre drivhuseffekten. Det er ikke godt nok. Hvis vi skal skabe et nyt Danmark sammen, så bliver vi nødt til at opfinde en ny måde at tale på, og en ny måde at føre politik på. Det kan godt være, at ord som socialisme og liberalisme, solidaritet er ord, der beskriver verden af i går og ikke verden af i morgen. En moderne verden er mangfoldig, og det må vores demokrati også være. En stemme på de moderate i morgen er en stemme på et nyt Danmark. Tak.
Tak til Nyborg. Great clip. It's a great clip. It's a great show. So that sort of informed how you did the storytelling. Talk about some other things that you used CGI or effects for. You were telling me in the pre-brief about some of the examples. One was, I think, had to do with you had to go to Afghanistan, but you didn't have the money. So talk us through that. What was that all about?
It was the beginning of the second season, the first episode in the second season. We wanted, because, you know, prime ministers, they do travel, but we had spent way too much money on the first season, so we could not afford to let our prime minister travel, and the writers wanted her to go to Afghanistan, to a military camp. So what we did, and where I was so happy that the visual effects existed, was we found this field just 10 minutes, in Copenhagen actually, and we shot these, and we built up a military camp. And then on the days we were going to shoot, we had 2 days for 10 minutes. It was raining, it was really pouring down, and we were in knee-high mud. But still, we were able to make the shooting, And then the visual effects guy, they just kind of swapped, the view to an Afghan valley, and we had some helicopters. It was mostly sound, but we had one helicopter, I think.
They painted it in. They just painted it in. It
Yeah,
wasn't
we
real.
painted, from the visual effects. And so anyway, it in the end, even though we're high-end drama in Denmark, but we don't have that much money, it looks like a sunny day in Afghanistan. So that was pretty cool.
That was pretty cool.
And and another example, if you want one more.
Yeah, please, talk about the trees.
The visual effects guy saving the producer's ass, you could say. The writers wanted to make episode 8 were supposed to be shot in April and May, but the writers wanted it to be July and the heat wave summer, and it should be hot. And in the episode, because the Prime Minister were going on summer holiday for 3 days. And we discussed that, we knew that beforehand. We said we have to shoot in April and May, but anyway, they made the scenes. So we thought, okay, we hope that there will be some leaves on the trees when we shoot. But then it turned out we had to shoot in April, and there were not a single leaf on any tree in Denmark at that time. And in Borgen, in a show like Borgen, you're so happy every time you get to come outside to shoot, because we are inside offices all the time and you get claustrophobia. And so when you get outside, you want to make big pictures. And the photographer, he made this lovely pan, over these naked trees. And when we came to the editing room, they put in this pan because we could breathe. And then we had to ask the VFX guy, can you help us? And he could do so. So he spent, 4 weeks, one guy, making that pan of 20 seconds and put green leaves on the trees. So I liked him, but next time we will shoot in July, that's for sure.
Says the producer, exactly. So on that note, I'm going to run another clip that we have stored. This is the Michael Klick 2, video clip 2. Michael Klick, if you don't know, is the producer of Homeland, and he also worked on 24. So Michael Klick is talking a little bit about how technology can help you do things that you wouldn't otherwise do. So Michael Klick, number 2, please.
The technology has helped a lot in that there's lots of other ways to record the image that give you a lot more flexibility and are a lot easier than it used to be. It used to be when you did car mounts, you had all these huge mounts, and now there's ways to do it that are very quick, very speedy. There's also ways to do it that are very cheap, so that if you destroy a camera in an action sequence, it didn't cost you $100,000, it cost you $300. That's all of a sudden lots of other shots are possible.
Interesting.
Yeah, interesting. So it can be money saving, and also can be, as you say, saving the ass of the producer if you don't have trees and you need leaves on your trees.
Yeah.
Nigel, let's come to you now. So in some ways you're at the other end of the spectrum here. You were creating something from really nothing. I mean, she needed some leaves in her trees. You needed to create a whole universe, a boat, everything. I mean, everything, the sea, everything had to be created. So talk to us a little bit about Titanic and how you embraced visual effects and CGI.
Reluctantly is the answer. I had offices in Soho. I'd done a lot of big period shows, which are difficult to mount and involve a huge amount of production design, but I really only ever used CGI as a remedial thing. That's to say that if there was a satellite dish that suddenly popped up in the shot, you could just have it taken out. Or if you had a building that was perfect for what you wanted, and then next to it was a modern building, you could shoot and then have the modern building replaced by a period building. So I was coming to this as a bit of a virgin. Titanic was a show, a 4-episode show that was done for the 100th anniversary of the sinking in April 2012. It's written by Julian Fellowes, who created and writes Downton Abbey. And in order to do it, we had to create pretty much everything you see on the screen except for the actors. We didn't have a ship, obviously, so we had to create the ship, and we had to decide how much of the ship we would actually build as a set and how much we would then add as a visual effect. We didn't have an EC because the only place we could afford to shoot that had a studio big enough to take the set that we were going to build was in Budapest. And as you probably know, Budapest is as far as you can get from the sea in Europe. So we had no boat, no sea, and that was where we started. I was blessed in that because it was we were doing it as a co-production with Canada, and I didn't want to split the crew, so I just kept the Canadian end of it, the 20% that you have to do a co-production, to post-production. And I was able to do that because as well as the normal post-production, the grading and the online and the soundtrack, the music composition and the sound mixing, I also had the visual effects, which bumped the price up. And I therefore recruited a special effects supervisor called Tom Turnbull, who had already won a BAFTA, which is the sort of British equivalent of an Oscar, for a show he'd done in the UK. He won another one for Titanic, deservedly so. And he helped me through this process, which I have to say was quite extraordinary. On the one hand, it enabled us to tell a story we could never otherwise have told. On the other hand, it reduced us all to old men. And I learned a lot of lessons from it, which I'll share with you after you've seen the clip. This is not actually a clip, this is a trailer for the show, so it has a lot of actors in it. The interesting bits from the point of view of this seminar are that every so often you see shots of Titanic, either the whole ship or bits of the ship. So just bear in mind when you're watching it that what we built was we built part of 2 decks. We actually used the same sort of template that Cameron used when he did the movie. So we built part of 2 decks. So the stern was missing, and everything in front of the cabin on the top deck was missing. So the whole of the front of the ship had to be put on in afterwards, and the back of the ship had to be put on afterwards, and everything really pretty much above the level of the actors' heads had to be put on afterwards as well. So even when you're on the ship, vast chunks of what you're watching were not there when we were shooting. But we did have the deck, we had all the lifeboats, and we had all that stuff, so the actors had something to respond to, which made it much easier for them. But there was a huge amount of work to do. And of course, every time you see the whole ship, so in this clip or this trailer, when you see the ship sinking from the point of view of people in the lifeboats, that sea ship, none of it's there. It's just a black tank with a few little dotted lights on, which are then used as the reference points. So let's run the clip and have a look.
Great. Run the clip.
Europe made me angry, and that's over now. I don't want to be angry anymore.
You seem familiar.
I'm not familiar, not to you.
How funny we are with all the little rules for everything. Don't you think people are getting tired of it?
First class, second class, what about your own class?
Well, there speaks the voice of the future.
Do you ever ask yourself why they have so much and you have so little? Put it this way, I'll never drink out of glass like this if I stay in Europe. I believe in making things happen. Would you take a chance?
Don't be frightened by the strength of your feelings.
I've never put myself in danger for something I believed.
Take a chance on me, please. You won't regret it. I promise.
But why take a risk when there's no need to?
What risk? The sea's like a mill pond.
Iceberg, right ahead.
Hand the starboard!
Don't worry, there's no danger.
They're lying.
She is going down then.
Looks like it.
Lower the boat. It's not even half full.
The boat from here have gone!
I know who you are. You knew he was trouble, didn't you? Right from the start.
You're the one who put us into steerage. What did you expect?
Turn!
What have you done?
There are women here and children! Let them take the chances like everyone else. Stand back! Let them through!
Mario! Help! I never kissed you.
Don't talk as if this is goodbye.
The boat must go!
We will meet again soon.
I refuse to say goodbye.
Remember me.
Let me talk to my wife.
I'll find him! Don't worry!
You're a good man. No. Thank you. No, I'm not.
What do you expect me to do? There's nothing anyone can do. I love you.
That was taken off a DVD, in fact, so I hope it survived being shown on a massive screen. So basically, as you can see, we had to create everything, the sea, the boat, the lot.
Talk about the planning process, because really the planning and how you actually set up the workflow, that's a big deal, isn't it?
One of the things that I learned from that experience, I mean, I've always been someone who's a great believer in planning. What I learned from this experience is that there cannot possibly be too much planning on a big CGI-dependent show. So I'm now, I have no idea why, about to embark on another one. This one, unfortunately, it's embargoed, so I can't talk about it in terms of specifics, but it takes place in space, and it's a thriller. So space is the setting, but it's not what it's about. But it does take place in space, and it takes place on and off planet. So you've got spaceship, and you've got a planet. So in that sense, it's like The Martian. You've got two whole different worlds to create, which will be entirely created. On that show, on this new show, which is it's written by an American feature film writer, and it's going to be directed by a feature film director. It's a big, expensive show, but we have one pilot script. There'll be 8 scripts. It's 8 hours long. We have one pilot script so far, so we're probably at least 1.5 years, if not 2 years away from shooting. I already have a production designer and a visual effects supervisor, producer, in deep and detailed conversation based on that first episode to break down where set building and locations, go and where CGI takes off. So one of the things you learn with visual effects is you have to have the key people have to talk to each other from the very, very first moment you can get them together. Now, obviously, they can't talk until there's something to look at, but they've now got one script, and that's enough for them to get going. It gives us some stuff on the spaceship, it gives them some stuff on the planet. It's very visceral and gripping, the first episode, so there's a lot of stuff going on. And they will, now, even as we speak, discussing this in weeks' time. There's a conference call between them and me and the director, who's out in LA, where we will hear what the director has to say about how he sees the division between the two. They'll put in their halfpenneth, and then they will go away and they will do me a rough budget for that first pilot show of their elements of it. That's to say production design on the one hand and visual effects on the other. Because the second thing you learn from doing visual effects is you cannot do a budget without that being part of it being done by people who really know what they're talking about. If you're doing a normal contemporary show, you can actually do a budget. If you know how long you're going to shoot for, if you know how many actors there are going to be, you can do a rough budget, rough enough to get the financial side of it started. You cannot do that if you're doing heavy visual effects. You've got to have experts in from the beginning, and they've got to tell you, roughly speaking, how much that is going to cost. And then you can factor that into the following episodes. I'll probably do the rest of the budget when I get a Bible, which will tell us the rest of the story, because from that we can work out how many other parts of the spaceship we're going to have to see, and how many other complicated
Which parts of the spaceship you can lose.
Yeah.
Just one interesting thing you said before, which I think these people would be interested in, and you learned it, I think, from Titanic, was what did you have to factor in terms of time for visual effects and budget for visual effects?
Yeah.
What were those numbers, those percentages?
one of the things I learned from Titanic was that I would not feel comfortable on a show like the one I'm just starting on without separating out the visual effects budget and giving it a 40% contingency, 30% minimum. And in terms of time, having got a schedule for how long it was going to take to deliver all these shots, I would not feel comfortable unless I'd added 25% time contingency to that. Because the thing about visual effects is anyone who's done them will tell you, including the people who do them for a living. I mean, not just producers like me who are in a constant state of wonder at what people can do, but the people the people who actually do the technical work. They will all tell you that when you start, you do not know, no matter how much you plan it, you do not know for sure how many shots you're going to require and how long they're going to take to do. I mean, we ended up on Titanic. We started with, and we planned this, we thought we planned it really carefully. We had just under 300 shots that used visual effects. And that ranged everything from removing wires, something as simple as that, to a shot of the entire ship. We ended up not with under 300, we ended up with 457.
Oh,
and
that's
that
a
is
lot
not
more.
unusual.
That's a lot more.
That's a lot more.
Yeah.
In terms of time, we had to deliver. It was time sensitive because it had to be shown everywhere, in America, in the UK, in Germany, Spain, France. I mean, everywhere it was being shown. It had to be shown on the 12th of April, 2012. That was the date that the Titanic sank. The last part had to be on that date. So we had to have the show ready. We were planning to have it delivered, the visual effects finished by the middle of November 2011, because the Germans, ZDF, who were taking it in Germany, needed to have the show by the end of December in order to do the dubbing that they needed before April when the show was on. We missed that deadline. We then missed the next deadline and the next. We were now coming up to Christmas, and I was actually threatening there were three big visual effects companies working on this, and we were down to one by this time because they had all the most difficult shots, and we had, out of our 457, we had 40 left. We were getting that down bit by bit, but not fast enough, and I was threatening them with career termination for all of us if we lost the €1 million+ that ZDF were going to be putting into the show, which we would have lost if we hadn't delivered. We got ZDF to extend to the end of the first week in January. Over Christmas, the director and I came back from Toronto, where we were doing this, and sat in a room for most of Christmas getting satellite images of these shots beamed into us so we could say, no, that's still not right, and send it back again. We went back out there. We then had 1 week left. We were down to like 6 shots by this time. The final shot we finished, I asked the post-production supervisor, in order to get it to ZDF by Monday morning, when is the last? And she said, 7:30 on Saturday night. You've got to give it to me, 7:30 on Saturday night, finished. And then I'll work through Sunday, get it on the plane. It'll be with them Monday morning. On Friday afternoon, we finished the last shot, and then noticed that actually we had the wrong number of funnels in it. We got so focused on this shot, which is when the ship actually breaks in two, on how difficult it was to get it right.
You had too many smokestacks. You mean the funnels on the boat?
Funnels on the boat. We stopped noticing. Months before, we stopped noticing that at that point, because one of the funnels breaks before the ship splits in two. And when it split in two, one of the funnels breaks after it splits in two. So at that point, when we split it in two, we only had 3 funnels, and we were supposed to have 4. And
so how long did it take you to add a funnel?
24 hours.
Oh, my God.
And we delivered it at 7:28 on the Saturday night.
7:28.
And I mean,
hey, you were 2 minutes ahead. What are you worried about?
I was talking the other day to the special effects supervisor on the Bond movie, the latest Spectre, the latest Bond movie. And they have obviously a rather bigger special effects budget than we had. And they obviously have rather more time than we had. And she said that she was supposed to deliver on a Thursday, and she spent between Thursday and the following Tuesday sleeping on the floor of the special effects house while they tried to get the last 2 shots sorted out. And she'd been at this now this is the 3rd Bond movie she's done. She's the best in the business, basically. And so she said, there is no special effects driven film which will not end up with you sleeping on the floor at the end of it. I mean, it
All
just
right.
doesn't, I mean...
That's a great story, Nigel. I just want to one more clip from Michael Klick because I think it's pertinent here. This is clip 4 from Michael Klick, and he's talking about time management and these kind of things and planning, which I think is where we started. So if we could run that one, that'd be great.
But what's the biggest difference from a feature and a television show, I think, is one of time. A feature comes in. Right now, everybody here is getting ready to do Captain America, which is going to shoot here for 8 days, I've been told. And they're prepping it now. And it doesn't shoot for another 2 or 3 months. I arrived on April 13th. I went to camera on June 2nd. And I started from zero. And in that time, we got the offices up and running. We hired the entire crew. We cast the show. We built sets. We got all the equipment, and we started shooting. And now we shoot 8 to 10 days per episode, and we prep for 7. So once the train starts, it never slows down. You know, it comes up on a parallel track onto the next train, which is already in motion, and everybody jumps from one train to another, and that new train keeps going. And 8 days later, the same event occurs again, which is a huge shock for everybody here, because no one's used to that in this country, because you don't shoot like that here.
He's so right.
Let's talk a little bit about, maybe among all of us, about, how do you actually make this stuff believable? I mean, is there a point where you worry that the technology or the CGI is getting in the way or the visual effects is getting in the way? Do you have something to say about that, or have you not had that experience so much with what you've been doing?
We had CGI experience, but it was a couple of years ago, and we found out that our production process didn't fit with the CGI. So we do a little bit, of course, but we do less than before because we didn't.
You can't figure out how to work it in.
Well, we also felt we didn't need it for what we are telling, or for the kind of stories that we are telling.
Yeah. Why leave it in if you don't need it, right?
Of course, the colleagues of UFA Fiction, they do a lot of stuff, and when they work on a historical drama, they're able, and that's a great thing. Is that now we are able to shoot for television content that we weren't able to shoot like 5 years ago, and that's of course due to technical development.
Right.
Yeah.
How about you, Camilla? Is there any worry that you're going to become unbelievable, or it isn't going to look right, or?
Yes, but I think it's in a way weird, because if you have been making television for 20 years, I mean 10 years ago, I had never made visual effects. And now I still make contemporary drama, and we need more and more. And now I'm doing a new show about the Danish church, and I'll imagine that we're going to use a lot of visual effects, even though I cannot read it in the script. But I can be afraid that we don't have money enough to do it right. So it's good it's getting cheaper, because I have made stuff in Borgen as well, and it looks like shit, because we did not have time and money. It's not that the guys cannot do it, but that we cannot pay for it, or we're too busy, like he says, because once the production train goes, then you just have to keep on going. So that's what I worry, because when you see Bond movies and big series like that, the audience are getting used to a high standard, and that's a problem for us, and I guess it's the same for you.
What about you, Nigel? I mean, what about this sort of believability issue?
I mean, I don't see it as a problem. It's a storytelling tool. I mean, visual effects is an extraordinary storytelling tool. It enables us to tell stories that we just literally could not tell before. It's becoming available to television at an extraordinary pace. I mean, when Cameron made Titanic in 1996, I think it cost $180 million. A large chunk of that was the visual effects. When we made Titanic in 2012, the visual effects cost £1.2 million. Now, it's a lot of money, but by God, it's not even James Cameron's laundry allowance.
Right.
I mean, we were able to do that because he developed the software. And because, as we know, computers become the sort of the received wisdom is that they become twice as powerful and half as expensive every 2 years or something. And so the cost of this comes down, the technology increases, the possibilities increase. All the ways in which you tell stories can be unbelievable. The acting can be unbelievable, the mise en scène can be unbelievable, the visual effects can be unbelievable. But that's down to you as a group of filmmakers making a film. The point about visual effects is that they enable you to do things that you just could not do before, and do them in a way. My favorite visual effects, I have to say, are the ones that are invisible.
That you don't even notice.
I don't really want an army of 10,000 orcs, impressive though it is. What I want is the moment in Master and Commander when you see those two ships going around the Horn and you're thinking to yourself, my God, how did they persuade two guys who owned replica ships like that to go round the Horn, before you realise, of course, that it's all being done in a studio in New Zealand by guys with a boat sort of about the size of this platform throwing buckets of water over it. To me, that's wonderful. That's storytelling.
Let me open it up to the audience. Do any of you guys have any questions for these people? These are big practitioners who've worked on some very interesting productions. Any questions come to mind that you want to ask them? I have a couple of more if need be. Come on. No one? No one at all. There's one in the front. Reiner, can you just hand her the mic?
This is for Nigel. So I was just wondering if you're using your visual effects supervisor also as the visual effects producer on Titanic?
I did, yes. He was remarkable in that he performed both functions. So he was with us all the way through pre-production. We had 10 weeks pre-production on Titanic. He was there every day of that in Hungary. He was then there on the set every day. Although he wasn't always on the set, because he had this lovely little thing which was like a little photo booth that you get on a railway station, with which had a 360-degree camera, and he would grab everybody as they came off the set, cast, crew, people visiting, and just stick them in there for 2 minutes and just film them, and they became the little tiny figures you see jumping off the boat. He could put clothes on them and make them, So when you first saw the boat, the first time we saw it, we said the boat looks great, but it's all a bit bare. And he said, no, it'll have lots of people on it. And sure enough, it did. And that's, so he was there all the time. And then he was there all the way through post. And he was literally supervising that side of the post-production, which was an extraordinary job. And we'd brought in by that time, as well as the two companies we had in Toronto doing the big stuff, we also had a company in Budapest who he'd found while he was out there, called Digital Apes, who were doing all the simpler stuff, which was a huge time saver for us. So he acted, and I don't know how many people could do that, could act in both capacities, but I'm a great believer in keeping things, this came up earlier, my rule of thumb when making a film is do simple things well, not complicated things badly. And that is never more true than with visual effects. Don't try something if you don't feel you can bring it off. There was one shot from the Cameron movie we knew we couldn't bring off, and it was nothing to do with visual effects, it was to do with just sheer numbers of people. There's a shot when it tips right up on its end, and you've got Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet right on the top, and all those stuntmen fall past, bouncing off the fixtures and fittings. He must have had 200 stuntmen doing that. We could only afford to have probably 25, so we got everybody either off the boat or trapped below stairs on the boat, under the deck, before we did that shot. So you see that shot only from the point of view of somebody in a lifeboat, because that was the one shot we knew we couldn't do. If we'd done it, it would have looked like pathetic.
Because you couldn't do it with visual effects. You needed real people.
We needed real people. And we wouldn't have enough of them. But simple things well is a great filmmaking statement on any basis. It goes for almost everything you do. And so for me, having one person doing those two jobs, if they're capable of doing it, just simplifies the process. It's one person to communicate with, one person who goes all the way through the production and knows every element of it, who's budgeted it, who's worked it out, who's done all the what are called the bid packages, when you do these wonderful little sort of like drawings of all the sort of like shots that are involved and send them out to the companies for them to bid on. It's an extraordinarily sort of lengthy and complicated process, but fascinating. Or it would be if you didn't have to deliver it.
there's another question here. Could you hand the mic to this man? Yep.
Thank you, yeah. Well, this is a question for Camilla. You said earlier that all the shots in the TV studio were made with a green screen. And I noticed that during the shots there was a lot of camera movement and people walking in front of the screens. And I know from my own experience that with green screen you get these ugly edges around people's heads. And
Yeah, that's always a problem.
yes, how do you solve that? Because from what I could see, it would have been sort of a rotoscoping job during most of those.
Did it look okay or what?
Yeah, it looked pretty good, yeah.
It's not supposed to be on a big screen like this, but normally we would make rules for the DOPs and the directors saying don't walk in front of the green screen or the screens. And then they would make an arrangement and they would do it anyway. So it would
They do it anyway.
again and again, and we could have these discussions always. But so we had to solve it in the effects computer, or what you call it, and it would just take longer time. Yeah, basically that's it.
We had people, I mean, walking, running past green screens all the time in Titanic. I do think that technology has moved on. I don't know when your experience was. I mean, but
this is last year.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, maybe you had the wrong DOP then, because because I mean, if they light the green screen correctly now, I mean, there was a time when you had to have all the visual effects taking place above the head of your actors. I don't know if you remember that, or if it was going to be, they had to be standing still. They had to be, you know, there were all sorts of rules. They've all gone out the window now. I mean, if you've got a green screen and it's lit properly, you can have people walking about in front of it. You can do anything you like with it.
But this is the last 2 years or so. Or
yeah, but Titanic was made 3 years ago. So,
Okay.
I mean, 4 years ago now. 2011, we made it. So,
it's England.
Right, so, but then...
but I mean, you think of any of these movies, think of any movie that you can think of that involves like massive green screen. I mean, now you have, you know, crowds running about, you have all sorts of things going on.
Sounds lovely.
So, I mean, lighting is
But
very
then that
important.
means you have to spend a little bit more money setting it up and getting someone to light it properly.
Yes, you do. But again, I mean, if you're going to do it, you've got to do it properly. I mean, otherwise don't do it, because, as you say, there's nothing worse than having a shot where someone walks past and there's a fuzzy line around them. And that, I mean, audiences don't give you marks for effort in a film. That's the thing we had to keep reminding ourselves in Titanic. The fact that we were doing the whole film, 4 episodes, 4 hours of it cost £10 million, and you know, the movie had cost 180 million, so probably 250 million in terms of when you add in inflation, and was only 2 hours long, so half as long and X times more expensive. But the audience were not going to look at ours and go, well, considering they only had like, you know, a 25th of his budget, they did pretty well.
Yeah, they're not
they
going to
don't.
say.
I mean, that's not the way it works. So, I mean, don't use any effect that you don't feel comfortable with being able to bring off. That's a really good rule to abide by.
I think that's a great place to end. So I want to thank Jonas. I hope you have more collaborative work with your other things, and maybe integrate a little bit more CGI and effects where you need it, not where you don't need it. Right. And Camilla, we're looking forward to your Danish religious. Your look at the religion in that sounds interesting. Yes. You know, I didn't know I was going to like Borgen. I'm sure I'm going to like a piece on religion. And Nigel, we look forward to the space movie, whatever it is. And we hope that you don't get too many more gray hairs from that one. It'll be fun. Could you please join me in thanking our panel? Okay, thanks, guys.